Good morning, Rod.
What's up? How are you? How was your golf outing?
It was good, man. I had a great time. It was a beautiful day yesterday, no humidity. Swung it okay, so it was a great break and a fun day. But back at it this morning, talking some sports, and I'm going to start with you with the same subject that I started with Scott Moore earlier, but it is finally a done deal, as we like to say in the sportscasting business. Nick Saban officially announcing late last week that Bo Davis has been replaced by Karl Dunbar as the defensive line coach. We've talked about Dunbar before coming in from the NFL, but now that he's officially on staff, just your thoughts on this hire.
Well, I think he's a coach with a great reputation as a defensive line coach. I mean, he did a tremendous job in the NFL. If you look at his resume, his teams very successful stopping the run. I think when he was with the Vikings from 2006 to 2008, in that 3-year span, they led the league against the run. And I think in his time there in Minnesota, they never worse than 11th against the run in the overall NFL stats. But he's been very successful everywhere he's gone. And at the same time, his defensive lines have produced a lot of sacks. They've been very successful at getting pressure on the pass. I think he's done an outstanding job, and he's obviously a very, very, very good coach. And I think one of the things, and we said this last week on your show, Gary, I thought one of the keys when replacing Bo Davis is finding a guy who could have the ability to, create a brotherhood on that defensive line. I think that's one of the things that Bo Davis did very, very well. Those players trusted in him. It was a group, it was a family, and I think that's what a lot of these guys that have been around here a while, really like, and one of the things that helped them be successful. And I think Karl Dunbar has those qualities. We talked about that. Some of the things I've read up on him, he really believes in that. So I think he's going to do an outstanding job here. Again, I know some people have questioned whether or not he can recruit or really doesn't necessarily have a recruiting background per se. But we'll see. And I do think that when you look at the credentials that he has, that certainly has to be very attractive to a young prospect.
Rodney, and something else that Scott Moore and I discussed earlier, and I want to get your take on it, is just the wear and tear of the season now. It wasn't that long ago that college football teams played 11 games. Well, it wasn't much longer than that. They played 10, but 11 games for a long time was the standard, as you know, and if you went to a bowl game, you would play 12. Then some of those kickoff games that came around in the 80s, if people played in those, it were like an extra game, and some teams would play 12 regular season games. But I remember in 1992 when Alabama, the first year of the SEC championship game, went 11-0, then won the SEC championship to get to 12-0, then had to win the Sugar Bowl to beat Miami to win the national championship to be 13-0. Now Alabama, if they go all the way, is playing 15 games. And with recruiting being the way it is, and now these satellite camps, it's a long season, and the wear and tear that it takes on these players and coaches, I think sometimes that flies a little bit under the radar. And I got into that subject with Scott by talking about the fact that there's no Crimson Caravan this year, but he said he thinks it may just be a nice break for everybody coming off how difficult and long that past season was to kind of get the batteries recharged and get ready for 2016.
Well, it really is a long season, and like you said, I remember when there were just 10 games, and then 11, and with the bowl game, make it 12. So it's obviously the season has gotten, much, much longer, and it is a lot of wear and tear. And I think, when you look at that, as you look at Alabama's season last year, for example, all the players that they had, especially on the defensive line, that they could rotate in and out, allowed them to, stay fresh and healthy throughout most of the season. And I think that, it's something that, when you look at that grind that you have to go through, there's a period of time that your body needs to have to recover. And we talked about it, I think, last week or a couple of weeks ago, when you mentioned that, after A-Day, where do they go from here? Well, the players have had some time off. to allow their bodies to heal. And this is really, I'm thinking, the first significant time off maybe they've had, because maybe a little bit after the game after the Clemson game, during the recruiting period, they may have had some time off, but, they have to get ready for spring practice. Then they go through spring practice, and now they have the opportunity to allow their bodies to rest for a month. And guess what? They start back here, next week or so, when all the guys start reporting in for the summer workouts and all of that stuff. And, again, their bodies are young and they recuperate very quickly, but still it is a long grind on everyone.
Rodney, I want to ask you about the quarterback gurus that are out there now. And so many of them work with college quarterbacks, and it's commonplace. Some coaches, like Gus Malzahn, have said they're not a big fan of it, although I saw where his quarterback, John Franklin III, was working with Michael Vick and another quarterback coach. Blake Barnett's been working with George Whitfield. There were pictures on the internet this past week of him doing those drills where they get out there in the ocean and all the different things that he works with them on. These schools have quarterback coaches, offensive coordinators. Your thoughts on these college quarterbacks working with outside quarterback coaches? Do you ever see not a conflict, but do you see maybe a quarterback guru teaching something that Lane Kiffin isn't teaching, and it could be a little bit of a problem there? Is that something you've thought about at all? What's your stance on quarterbacks having private quarterback tutors outside of their own quarterback coach and offensive coordinator?
I don't know that he could what all they do. I just think it's an opportunity for them to keep working with a coach. Obviously, Lane Kiffin can't really work with them now on those types of things due to the rules. But I think it's an opportunity for those guys when they have this time to kind of work with someone different, do some different things to help them and to polish their skills or whatever. Work on some things that they need to work on. So I really don't think it's so much that they're going to learn a whole lot that they couldn't learn under Lane Kiffin or any offensive coordinator. It's just an opportunity now with not being able to work with their coach to one that can help them. I don't know how qualified these guys are. I don't know that much about them, to be honest with you, so I really couldn't say. I just wonder if they're so good, why aren't they coaches, somewhere? But I just don't know that much about it. I couldn't tell you anything about George Whitfield or any of these other guys.
Let's change topics. Alabama men's basketball news that they're receiving a top-tier transfer with 3 years of eligibility. Daniel Giddens, originally from Mableton, Georgia, transferring in from Ohio State. First thing you notice is he's 6'10". The second thing you notice is he averaged 1.5 blocks, 3.8 points, 3.6 rebounds as a freshman at Ohio State, a great program. Offensively, seems like he's got some work to do. Of course, he has to sit out. Last year, Nick King sat out. Of course, he'll be eligible for Memphis this year. Your opinion on Daniel Giddens coming in, not going to be able to play this year, will be able to practice. I know Avery Johnson's looking to build this program any way that he can, but this seems like a nice transfer. Size-wise, he'll have a lot of eligibility left once he becomes eligible after sitting out. What's your take on Giddens coming in from Ohio State to Alabama?
Well, it seems like a really, really good pickup. I mean, 6'10", you don't get a lot of those guys, and Alabama needs them inside. And, he's athletic. I know that he was highly regarded coming out of, high school. Wasn't he a top 50 recruit? I mean, so he's a very talented guy. It looks to me like slowly, but Avery Johnson is piecing together his roster for the future. I mean, you mentioned Nick King. You've got Giddens coming in. You've got the two, Davis and Braxton Key, that they've got coming in. Although we know Giddens can't play next year, but still, when you start looking ahead, it looks like he's piecing together a pretty good roster as they start to move forward.
Rod, baseball had an awesome weekend. A shot in the arm. They go into Fayetteville. Now, granted, Arkansas was struggling. They'd lost 6 conference games in a row. But still, that's not an easy place to go play. And Alabama sweeps the series. But you know what? We've said it all year. They hit. They can beat anybody. The pitching's there. Yeah. They go up there and they score 25 runs in 3 games. That's 8+ runs a game. And they get a sweep. Simple as that. I mean, this team hits. They're dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were behind 4-3 in the ninth.
Scored 4 in the ninth yesterday. Yeah.
Scored 4 in the ninth, and we said that from the very beginning. If this team could hit, that they would have a chance to be really successful. It's just whatever reason they've been really kind of erratic a little bit. And yesterday or this past weekend, obviously they put it all together and won those 3 games. Now 15-12 in the SEC, and so I mean, you hope right now that maybe this team is really starting to kind of maybe hit a streak where they're coming together and playing really well on offensively and defensively. Obviously, the pitching's been very strong. So if they are here, if they're hitting the peak, it's the right time. Right towards the end. So it's going to be interesting to watch.
18-12 would be sweet if they could somehow sweep South Carolina this weekend. Man, they'd have a lot of momentum going into the SEC tournament. So I've got hopes now because we know they're going to pitch. We know they're going to pitch, and you get some offense and then late offense, like you mentioned yesterday, Rodney, to get 4 runs in the ninth. That's just something this team has not done. They haven't had a lot of late inning comebacks. So that's really, really sweet for them. And the women.
And how about Salem? Salem had.
Huge breakout.
He had the big hit yesterday. Yep. He got an 8-game hitting streak. A lot of people were critical of him, and earlier in the season when he was struggling, but he's starting to come around.
Yeah, the whole team offensively showed a spark. Will Haney's crushing the ball again, so they're dangerous. Softball, just par for the course. Alabama, number 6 national seed, hosting the Tuscaloosa Regional beginning on Friday, along with Sanford, Texas A&M, and Cal. They're in line, if they win their regional, to host the winner of the Seattle Regional in the Super Regional. Disappointment at the SEC tournament, losing to Auburn, but you have to shake that off and move on. And this is a good team. This is a well-balanced team. My anticipation is and expectation is they'll win the regional and host the Super and have a good chance to get back to Oklahoma City.
Yeah, Patrick Murphy, once again, I mean, it's just kind of the same thing. It's he has him in position, to do what you just said, to go back to Oklahoma City. Of course, they have to take care of business, but I know that there was a lot of negative reaction about the loss to Auburn. But, again, I think that Patrick Murphy will, as they start moving forward, this is really what they focus on.
Absolutely, and it'll be a jam-packed Rhodes House on Friday and Saturday and Sunday for the NCAA Tuscaloosa Regional coming up. Getting back to football before we turn it off with Rodney Orr and let him go, you mentioned that the players are going to be coming in for summer session, even the freshmen that were not here in the spring. I don't know exactly what the rules are as far as what they can do and can't do, but particularly for these new guys that are coming in that did not go through spring, how important is it this next couple of months before they get into fall camp for the players to take it amongst themselves, to get introduced to these freshmen, to make them feel part of the team and start the team bonding? We heard so much last year about how that team really bonded and came together. Do we make too much out of that, Rodney, as far as these summer months are concerned, with the players themselves building a team, or is that really, really important for success in the fall?
No, I think it's really important. I think it's an opportunity. Big opportunity, and I think with a lot of these guys coming in, it gives them a chance to first of all, they get into the strength conditioning program, the things that they do in the summer workouts that start preparing them for this season and for the future. So I think that's really big, and I think the things that they do voluntarily, like some of those past scale workouts that they do, and again, that's all voluntary. Coaches can't be involved in that. I think that that's really big, too, because, and I do think a lot of these older players take it upon themselves to help the younger guys to learn at that time. And so I think it's really important. And then when August camp rolls around, these guys, even though they still have a lot to learn just from a practice standpoint, I do think that they have a little bit of a comfort level about, what they're doing or what they're heading into. So no, Gary, I think this is a really big step as we start to move towards the season.
Be here before you know it. All right, Rod, before you go, I know TiderInsider.com. I guess it's the down season, so to speak, as far as football is concerned. But you're never down on TiderInsider.com. Always cranking out updates and recruiting updates. Tell folks how they can get signed up.
It's TiderInsider.com. It's only $48 a year, and you can get instant access right now with your credit card. We have an update right now with incoming freshman defensive lineman Quentin Williams, and we're going to have a couple other updates here later on about some other players that Alabama's recruiting for this class. So, like you said, Gary, even though football season's still a little ways away, it never really stops. And again, it's TiderInsider.com, only $48 a year.
Where the season never ends. Thank you, Rodney.
All right, take care.